Russia and China, once economic allies, are now at odds. In a shocking turn of events, Moscow has hit Chinese cars with heavy tariffs, disrupting what seemed like an unshakable partnership. But why would Russia target its biggest trade partner, especially at a time when both countries are under pressure from the West?
But now it seems Moscow has had enough. So it is clamping down on the trade, using a unique form of tariffs.
For years, China filled the void left by Western automakers in Russia, seizing control of the market as brands like Volkswagen and Toyota pulled out. But now, with Chinese cars making up over 60% of Russia's auto sales, Moscow is pushing back, fearing the collapse of its domestic industry. What does this mean for the friendship of Moscow and Beijing? Is this just an economic adjustment or the start of a deeper rift? And how will China respond? Let's break it down. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe for the best insights on global trade, economics, and geopolitics. Now let's get into it. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the West responded with severe economic sanctions, isolating Moscow from global markets. Among the most significant departures were Western automobile manufacturers like Volkswagen, Mercedes, and Ford. Their exit left an opportunity in the Russian auto industry, a gap China was eager to fill. Before the conflict, Russia's car market was among the largest in Europe, with sales reaching 1.5 million passenger vehicles in 2021, just behind France and the UK at 1.6 million each. Western brands dominated the market, accounting for approximately 70% of vehicles produced in Russia, a figure that rose to 92% when including joint ventures between Western and Russian companies. Rich consumers in Moscow favored luxury models like the Mercedes S-Class, while regions in the eastern provinces leaned towards Korean and Japanese brands such as Toyota. French car maker Renault, in partnership with Avtovaz, which is the producer of the Lada, relied on Russia for 18% of its global sales in 2021. The imposition of sanctions in 2022 led to a mass exit of these Western car makers, leaving factories idle and consumers with limited options. This sudden vacuum presented a golden opportunity for Chinese automakers. Brands like Chery, Geely, and Great Wall Motor swiftly moved in, filling the void left by their Western counterparts. Their market share skyrocketed from 9% in 2021 to 61% in 2023. In monetary terms, the dominance of Chinese brands is even more pronounced, with 90% of sales revenue now flowing to Chinese producers. This surge is particularly striking given the global context. Chinese car manufacturers had been struggling to penetrate Western markets, facing stiff competition and skepticism over quality. The Russian market, however, offered a receptive audience, especially as consumers sought affordable alternatives amidst economic uncertainty. Chinese brands not only provided competitive pricing, but also a range of models that appealed to Russian tastes. Yet this dominance is not without its challenges. The Russian government, being careful of over-reliance on Chinese imports, has begun implementing measures to bolster domestic production. In October 2024, Moscow hiked recycling fees that penalize foreign-made vehicles, effectively imposing a tariff on Chinese imports. This move aims to encourage Chinese manufacturers to establish production facilities within Russia, thereby boosting local employment and technological transfer. The government also plans to double the scrappage fees for all car producers from 2025 to boost domestic production and raise state revenue. For Chinese automakers, the Russian market has become an opportunity and a problem. On one hand, it offers a lucrative outlet amidst global challenges. On the other, it exposes them to geopolitical risks and potential backlash from Western nations. The European Union, for instance, is closely monitoring China's support for Russia, which could lead to increased scrutiny and trade restrictions. Moreover, the sustainability of this market dominance is uncertain. Russia's economy faces ongoing challenges, and any stabilization or improvement in relations with the West could pave the way for the return of Western brands, intensifying competition. While Chinese brands have reaped substantial benefits in the short term, the long-term landscape remains filled with uncertainties. China's automotive industry has experienced remarkable growth over the past decades, positioning the nation as a global leader in vehicle production. However, this rapid expansion has led to a significant overproduction issue, with factories churning out more cars than the domestic market can absorb. This surplus has resulted in vast car graveyards, where thousands of unsold vehicles languish, highlighting the challenges of balancing production with actual demand. In cities like Hangzhou, massive car graveyards have emerged, housing over 100,000 vehicles that failed to meet national emission standards or were rendered obsolete due to rapid technological advancements. These expansive lots, filled with rows upon rows of unsold or decommissioned cars, are a stark testament to the consequences of overproduction. The existence of such graveyards underscores the environmental and economic challenges China faces in managing its automotive surplus. To mitigate the domestic oversupply, Chinese automakers have aggressively sought international markets to offload excess inventory. Russia, in particular, has become a significant destination for these surplus vehicles. For Russian consumers, the influx of Chinese cars has been a mixed blessing. On one hand, these vehicles offer affordability and accessibility, filling the gap left by departing Western brands. Chinese models are often priced more competitively, providing options for budget-conscious buyers. However, the dominance of Chinese vehicles has raised concerns among Russian manufacturers about the sustainability of domestic automotive production. While many nations race toward a greener future with electric vehicles, China seems to have found an alternative outlet in Russia. In 2023, a staggering 97% of Chinese vehicles sold in Russia were gas-powered. This figure tells a story of surplus production and mismatched market trends. While the world rapidly transitions to EVs with their efficient powertrains and lower emissions, China is left with a stockpile of gasoline cars that hardly find buyers elsewhere. It appears that what was once an admired export strategy has morphed into a dumping ground for products that no longer fit modern global demands. Moscow, once eager for affordable Chinese cars, now finds itself in a dilemma. While these imports filled the gap left by Western brands, they are now crushing Russia's domestic auto industry. Local manufacturers, already struggling with outdated technology and weak investment, are being outcompeted by a flood of cheap gas-powered vehicles. Meanwhile, the global shift toward EVs is leaving Russia behind. Governments worldwide are incentivizing cleaner, more efficient electric cars, while China offloads its surplus of gas-powered models onto the Russian market. High fuel consumption and emissions make these vehicles increasingly obsolete elsewhere. Yet China continues producing them, driven by legacy manufacturing and the unexpected demand in Russia. Moreover, this scenario highlights a complex interplay of political and economic interests. Initially, the partnership between China and Russia was seen as mutually beneficial, a trade alliance that would bolster both economies. Yet, as China offloads its unsellable gas-powered cars in Russia, the economic scales begin to tip unfavorably. Moscow's reliance on imported vehicles is slowly eroding the market share and viability of its domestic car manufacturers. The alarming rate at which local brands are losing ground points to a deeper issue of the erosion of national industrial capability under the guise of a strategic partnership. As domestic experts warn about the long-term effects on local employment and technological innovation, the question arises: is this dumping strategy a calculated risk or an unintended consequence that could destabilize Russia's economic foundations? Beyond the immediate impact, this shift is delaying Russia's transition to cleaner technologies. The flood of cheap gas-powered cars discourages investment in EVs, further isolating Russia as global markets move toward electric mobility. With stricter environmental policies in Europe and North America, Russia risks falling even further behind, widening the gap between its auto industry and the rest of the world. Russia's recent escalation of the recycling fee, commonly dubbed the scrap tax, is a bold maneuver to regain control over its automobile market. By doubling this fee to $7,500, the Kremlin aims to curb the influx of low-cost Chinese vehicles, which have flooded the Russian market since 2022. The increased fee functions similarly to a tariff, making Chinese imports less financially attractive and compelling Beijing to reassess its export strategies. But hold on. Russia isn't alone in this crackdown. Across the Atlantic, Canada has taken a dramatic step by imposing a staggering 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles. This move, effective from October 1st, 2024, aligns with similar actions by the United States and the European Union, all accusing China of unfairly subsidizing its EV industry to dominate global markets. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau emphasized that such measures are necessary to counter China's state-directed policies that create overcapacity and distort fair competition. The United States hasn't been idle either. In May 2024, Biden announced a quadrupling of tariffs on Chinese EVs, raising them to 100%. This aggressive stance is part of a broader strategy to protect domestic industries from what is perceived as China's unfair trade practices. The U.S. administration argues that these hefty tariffs are essential to shield American manufacturers from a flood of underpriced Chinese goods, which could potentially cripple local businesses. Europe, too, is pushing back against China's automotive dominance. The European Union has imposed tariffs of up to 36.3% on Chinese-made EVs, citing concerns over market distortions caused by state subsidies. Brands like MG, owned by China's SAIC, have felt the impact, with sales dropping 19% between November 2024 and January 2025. Despite these challenges, some Chinese manufacturers, such as BYD, have managed to increase their market share in Europe, indicating a complex and evolving landscape. These coordinated actions by Russia, Canada, the United States, and the European Union signal a significant shift in global trade dynamics. The collective aim is to ensure a level playing field in the automotive industry, particularly concerning the rapidly growing EV sector. However, these protectionist measures also risk escalating trade tensions with China, potentially leading to a tit-for-tat scenario that could disrupt global supply chains and affect consumers worldwide. The big question now is, how will China respond to this pushback? Will it adjust its industrial policies, seek negotiations, or retaliate with its own set of tariffs? Russia's recent decision to hike the scrap tax on imported Chinese vehicles, effectively doubling it to $7,500, is going to be a challenge for China. How will China respond to this economic maneuver? One potential avenue for China is to adapt by localizing production within Russia. This strategy would allow Chinese automakers to circumvent the hefty import fees and maintain their market presence. In fact, some Chinese manufacturers have already begun this transition. For instance, Chery has started assembling cars in Russian plants vacated by Western companies, signaling a willingness to integrate more deeply into the Russian automotive landscape. However, there's an undercurrent of tension. China could perceive Russia's tax hike as a protectionist measure, prompting considerations of retaliatory actions. Such countermeasures might target Russian industries reliant on Chinese supply chains, potentially disrupting sectors beyond automobiles. The intricacies of Russia and China's economic relationship add layers of complexity to this scenario. While they have strengthened ties, especially in the face of Western sanctions, this tax hike underscores that national economic interests can strain even the closest alliances. The broader implications of this dispute could be profound. If China chooses to retaliate, it might not only affect the automotive sector but also ripple through other industries, reshaping global supply chains. Also, if China opts for collaboration by increasing local production, it could solidify its influence in the Russian market, potentially sidelining domestic manufacturers. This situation shows how quickly global markets are changing. Right now, the world is caught in a web of trade wars, with the United States leading the charge. But no one expected Russia, a close partner of China, to join in by imposing tariffs. This just proves that in global economics, there are no permanent friends, only shifting interests. Every country, no matter how close its ties, is ultimately looking out for its own survival. China has many ways to respond, but the biggest question is, will it retaliate? Russia's most valuable export to China is oil, and if Beijing wanted to strike back, it could target energy imports. But given the current state of global trade and their shared challenges, a full-blown trade war seems unlikely. A diplomatic resolution is the most probable outcome, at least for now. But this is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. With economic tensions rising across the world, this move could signal deeper shifts in the Russia-China alliance. Will this be the first of many trade disputes? And how will this affect the balance of power in the long run? Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next update. See you next time.